Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to sketch out the hidden engine driving our entire economy. We're starting from a place you know very well, the physical cash sitting right there in your wallet.
So imagine you've got some cash, and you decide to deposit it at your local bank. Have you ever wondered what actually happens to it next? Does it just sit there in some dusty, highly secured vault waiting for you to come back? Well, the reality of what happens to your deposit is way more fascinating and incredibly active than just locking it in a metal box.
Section 1. The Commercial Banking Engine. So what exactly is a commercial bank? Sure, it's a financial institution that accepts your public deposits, and yeah, it lends money out. But here is the real kicker. It has the unique, almost magical power to actually create and destroy money. This specific ability to create money through lending completely separates commercial banks from other places you might put your cash, like mutual funds or the post office. They don't just store wealth, they actively multiply it. Now, we really need to draw a clear contrast early on. On one hand, you've got your everyday commercial banks. They're profit-driven and they deal directly with the public, you and me. But on the other hand, you have the ultimate boss of the system, this central bank. The central bank operates with absolutely zero profit motive. It's totally welfare-driven, acting as the apex regulator for the whole financial system. And it doesn't deal with the general public at all. It only deals with commercial banks and the government. Section 2. The Magic of Credit Creation. All right, let's look at how commercial banks act as the momentum-generating engine of the economy by multiplying money. It all comes down to two types of deposits. First, you have primary deposits. This is the actual physical cash you deposit. The bank is totally passive here, and this doesn't change the total money supply. But then we have derivative deposits, and this is where the magic happens. When a bank grants a loan, they aren't handing the borrower a briefcase full of cash. They just open an account and add a digital balance to it. Boom. That action creates a derivative deposit, which literally increases the money supply in the economy. Let's walk through this step by step. Let's assume the central bank requires banks to keep a 20% cash reserve ratio. That means they have to hold 20% of deposits in cash, but they can lend out the rest. Step 1. You deposit 1,000 rupees into Bank of Baroda. They keep 200 rupees as a reserve, and they lend 800 to a borrower. Step 2. That borrower buys some goods, pays a trader, and that 800 rupees ends up being deposited into Canara Bank. Canara Bank keeps 20% of that, which is 160 rupees, and lends out the remaining 640. Step 3. The cycle just keeps going. That 640 gets spent and deposited into ICICI Bank. ICICI keeps 128 as a reserve and lends out 512. The money is literally expanding across multiple banks. So, what's the ultimate outcome of this crazy chain reaction? We use a little something called the deposit multiplier formula, which is just 1 divided by the required reserve ratio. In our example, 1 divided by 20% equals 5. This means your initial 1,000 rupee deposit mathematically transforms into 5,000 rupees of total deposits in the economy. The banking system just created 4,000 rupees out of thin air through derivative deposits. Pretty mind-blowing, right? Now, this multiplier effect isn't infinite. There are strict limits to credit creation. First off, it depends on the total cash actually available in the economy. Second, that cash reserve ratio. If the central bank raises it from 20% to 50%, banks can lend out a lot less. Third is public banking habits. If people suddenly prefer hoarding physical cash under their mattresses instead of using digital transfers, that money leaks right out of the system. It's also limited by whether borrowers even have good securities to offer and overall business conditions, like if we're in a recession versus an economic boom. Section 3. Central Bank's 9 Apex Functions. The central bank is the financial apex body of a nation. Let's evaluate the 9 specific functions it performs to keep the economic system intact. 1. Bank of Issue. Holds an absolute monopoly over note issue, excluding the government-issued 1 rupee note. This maintains absolute uniformity in currency circulation, builds public trust, and gives the central bank sovereign control over the total credit supply. 2. Banker, fiscal agent, and advisor to government. Handles all incoming receipts and payments on behalf of the state, manages public national and foreign debt, and acts as a financial advisor to shape budgetary and anti-inflation policies. 3. Banker to banks. Functions as the custodian of commercial bank cash reserves. Centralizing these cash pools provides structural defense during emergencies, allows seamless interbank transactions via simple book entries, and helps regulate commercial lending. 4. Custodian of nations' foreign exchange reserves. Manages the gold stock and international currencies,
routes foreign exchange receipts, and aggressively minimizes foreign exchange rate volatility. 5. Lender of the last resort. When commercial banks exhaust all internal resources and face a severe financial crisis, the central bank steps in to provide financial lifelines against approved collateral securities. 6. Clearinghouse. Because every commercial bank maintains a cash balance with the central bank, mutual interbank check claims are easily settled inside an integrated clearinghouse using digital book transfer entries. 7. Controller of credit. Regulates the absolute cost and overall quantity of circulating bank money via targeted quantitative and qualitative policies. 8. Promotional and developmental functions. Establishes specialized development banks to meet the credit requirements of industry and agriculture, expanding money markets. 9. Publication of statistical information. Regularly gathers and publishes crucial economic records to help planners formulate optimal public policies. 9. Apex functions. Note issue, gov banker, banker's bank, forex custodian, last resort, clearinghouse, credit controller, development and data publication. Section 4. Pulling the economic strings. So we know its functions, but how exactly does the central bank exert control? Well, we can neatly organize all this academic jargon by separating the tools into two categories. First, we have quantitative controls. These are your traditional tools that manage the overall volume and cost of money in the entire economy, without discriminating. This includes things like the repo rate, which is the rate the central bank lends to commercial banks, open market operations, and reserve ratios like the CRR and SLR. Then we have qualitative controls. These are precise, selective tools that dictate exactly where that credit flows. Think margin requirements, rationing loans for specific sectors, or even moral suasion, which is basically the central bank using its massive authority to informally persuade commercial banks to follow certain guidelines. Let's see how the central bank actually steps on the gas or slams on the brakes. During a recession, when the economy really needs a boost, the central bank expands credit. They lower the repo rate to make borrowing cheaper, buy government securities to inject cash right into the market, and lower the CRR to free up bank reserves. But conversely, during high inflation, they need to contract credit. So they raise the repo rate to make loans more expensive, sell securities to absorb all that excess cash, and raise the CRR, locking up more of the commercial bank's funds. It is a constant active recalibration of our economic engine. Section 5. The Banking Balancing Act. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. We've seen how commercial banks take your deposits and multiply them through credit creation. And hovering right above them is the central bank, utilizing its 9 apex functions and its credit control dials to keep inflation and growth in perfect harmony. It requires an incredibly delicate balance. The next time you walk into a branch and hand your cash to the teller, ask yourself, does your deposit just sit in a vault? Or is it the first domino in a mathematical sequence of credit creation? A sequence so powerful that it might just trigger the central bank to reach for its dials and initiate the next major economic policy shift? Your daily habits are literally the raw fuel for the wizard behind the curtain. Thanks for joining me, and keep exploring the magic of our economy.